It's one of those really interesting distinctions between, and this is a really obvious and banal point, but what the hell, I'm going to make it anyway. But this is
Go for it.
amongst other things, a comparative politics podcast about different systems, where we've had a number of changes of leader within the same party over recent years in the UK, and some of them have gone reasonably well, and some of them have gone less well. More of them have gone less well than well, frankly. But what they've all had in common is that there came a point at which the party that was led by a person came to the conclusion that it could not go on like this and they had to be got rid of. And there was, it happened as these things do, slowly then quickly, right?
Hmm.
But there was a mechanism, and
This
the
is
fundamental mechanism was when you lose the confidence of the people who you have to have the confidence of, you go. And that doesn't seem to exist in this case.
I had a very hard time getting in my former employer. I used to work for a British magazine, and
Yeah.
there would be a lot. They every so often they would be like, "Oh, are they going to get rid of Biden?" And I would try to explain that we don't. It's not the same. We're not in a parliamentary system,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have the same levers to pull, and so you end up with this strange tension between like for example, there are some who are saying, "Well, if we replaced Biden now, it wouldn't be the will of the voters." Well, was it really the will of the voters before? We didn't really have a primary,
You had no
you know.
primaries, yeah.
So it's a strange it's this strange thing where like the voters have power, but not really. The DNC has power, but not really. Like certain politicians have more power. There's no clear mechanism for the party to say, okay, we have the votes, you don't, you're out.
Yeah.
If we let like assume something changes, I've read an argument that were Biden to not be in the picture either by decision or because the DNC, whatever, that the only potential option could be Kamala Harris, because doing anything other than that would rip apart what little remains of this Democratic coalition here. How do you see that argument, despite all this
Um,
Whitmer and whatnot talk?
yeah, I tend to agree. First of all, she's the only one who can touch the war chest that they've built up, the campaign funding. Second of all, I think that yeah, I think like let's say they go for Whitmer, or they go for Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California. You've just jumped over the first Black woman vice president for a
Yeah.
guy named Gavin. Like I think that that goes over pretty poorly within the party and also with voters. She's in a tough position because obviously she has to go out there and defend her boss, and so she can't say, "Well, wait a minute, why isn't my name coming up in these conversations?" But I'm sure privately, wants her name to be coming up in these conversations.
There's been a sense that she's prosecuted herself a bit better up against Trump over the last year, taking on the abortion issue particularly.
Yeah, and I think, well, okay, so part of it is that Biden, look, I think she has really strange political instincts. I think some of the things that she's said and done over her career have been baffling. But first, do I think that she would have performed better in the debate than Biden on the question of, for example, abortion rights? Like, yes. Um, and also, I think she's not, and also, he's given her like the issues that she had were like the border, fallout from AUKUS. Like they gave her really toxic issues, and so that will hurt her. But on the other hand, like, okay, it's like those are the issues now, right? So
Yeah.
would it be worse? I don't like. Yeah, voters are still racist and sexist, but also they would believe that she has the mental cognition to do the job.
Yeah, I mean, not to speak up for the only South Asian in the race there, but like I feel like not only does she have a bad position at the moment, she's also had a bad position for the last 4 years, because I think it's evident that the Biden camp never wanted her to be seen as the more competent one, because that would have raised the questions about his
100%.
age much
Yes.
earlier, and so she's never been allowed to even build up a role, because he, even though he said he would be a transitional president, he didn't, follow through on that.
I think, Rohan, I think this is spot on. I think you're right to stand up for her on this, because in 2019, there's a Politico report that was like Biden hints at being a one-term president. And he was clearly, he spoke about being sort of a transitional figure and passing the torch to the next generation. But when the time came, after a life of wanting to be president, he was not giving up that seat that easily. And I think they definitely wanted to make sure that people were not like, okay, like it's Kamala's turn now. I think that's a completely correct, fair read on the situation.